Mara Valle liked to think of herself as an ordinary woman with an extraordinary timbre, a dark honey voice that could lower the pulse of a room full of broken hearts. She never sang at weddings or christenings, never auditioned for operas, never tried nightclubs. Her entire professional life was spent at St. Felicity Funeral Home, a sandstone building hemmed in by black locust trees on the north side of town. Families booked her months in advance, though a spot in her calendar was always provisional. The dead kept their own schedules. When a casket settled before the altar, when lilies clouded the air and the organ fell quiet, Mara stepped forward in a charcoal dress, clasped her hands, and sang lullabies. They were melodies she had written herself, variations on the half-remembered cradle songs her mother used to hum before cancer took her. Each tune ended with a descending minor third that felt like a sigh too heavy to finish. Mara's listeners never knew why they calmed so quickly, why toddlers stopped fidgeting, why widows stopped trembling, why even teenage sons who'd sworn not to cry found themselves swallowing sobs like warm tea. They chalked it up to grief working itself out. The funeral director, Mr. Singh, politely called it a gift. Mara called it a bargain. She walked home after every service, refusing rides or tips, and climbed the narrow stairs to her one-room apartment above a bakery. She brewed chamomile, opened the east-facing window, and waited for 1:11, i.e. the hour her phone clock always read when the whispering began. On good nights, the newly dead were considerate. They drifted through the plaster wall one at a time, hazy as breath on glass, and spoke in frayed murmurs. "Tell my sister I found the watch. Please give my cat to someone kind. I hid the will behind the pantry board." They never shouted, never threatened. If Mara nodded, they bowed and receded, their outlines snagging on moonlight like cobweb. By dawn, her notepad held bullet points of unfinished business, and within a week, she usually completed the tasks. A mailed letter here, a quiet phone call there, an anonymous envelope of cash slid under the right door. Families healed faster, unaware of the mediating voice that threaded through both worlds. But good nights were growing scarce. Thursday, in the brittle gray of early March, Mr. Singh phoned with a special request. Councilman Avery Holt, philanthropist, media darling, kingmaker, had succumbed to a sudden heart attack at 53. The service would be Friday afternoon, televised live. The Holt family wanted Mara on camera. She hesitated, imagining boom mics, camera drones, and a million viewers who might freeze-frame her face for internet dissections. Still, grief didn't consult comfort. She accepted. The chapel overflowed. Reporters clogged the side aisles. Floral arrangements towered like jungle canopy. Tableau lights shot heat across polished pews. Mara centered herself by touching the silver pendant her mother once wore, inhaled, and poured out the lullaby she had saved for the rarest moments. "Rest, O roaming sparrow." It rose like incense, coated the marble ribs of the ceiling, drifted down in translucent strands. By the final syllable, Avery Holt's widow leaned against the casket as though it were the only door in a burning house. His son, Brandon, cheeks twitching, searched his pockets for a handkerchief and came up empty. After the recessional, cameras chased everybody else. Mara slipped out a side exit, walking the 4 miles home rather than risk conversation. She reached her apartment as drizzle began. Thunder grumbled. She set 3 locks, unplugged the TV, left her shoes by the doormat, and brewed double-strength chamomile. Sleep took her on the sofa, but 1:11 a.m. arrived with surgical precision. Avery Holt manifested beside the kitchenette. Most ghosts looked faded, an overexposed photograph, yet he glowed bone-white, cutting the dark like a thrown knife. His tailored suit melted into vapor around the edges, but his expression held the ferocity of a courtroom cross-examination. "Help me," he hissed. "I was murdered." Mara clutched her teacup. "The obituary said cardiac arrest." "A convenient lie." He paced through the coffee table, leaving it intact. "Poison in my blood," administered by Brandon. He needed control of the Holt Foundation before I could divert funds to the homeless initiatives he hates. Mara swallowed. She had delivered plenty of clandestine messages, secret bank codes, hidden love letters, even a forgotten apology scribbled on a napkin. but murder cocooned in political intrigue was another magnitude. "I sing lullabies," she said. "I'm not a detective." "You're the bridge," he insisted, leaning so close, her breath frosted. "Without you, I'm trapped in echo. With you, I can finish what matters, expose him, or I will return every night, louder." A chill spidered over Mara's spine. She'd learned early that refusing a ghost didn't banish it, it only soured the visits. An agitated spirit had once shattered every plate in her cupboard. Another kept howling names until the neighbors threatened to call the police, yet murder meant danger in daylight, not just in dreams. "Give me proof," she said at last. Avery lifted his index finger, and a gleam of light erupted, crystallizing into a list of transactions, withdrawals, transfers, forged signatures. She committed the column of numbers to memory. It hurt, like swallowing ice shards. Then he vanished, taking the thunder with him. Sleep never returned. At dawn, she shuffled to the bakery downstairs, bought a crescent roll, and tasted only chalk. She spent the morning acquiring public records, cross-referencing them against the spectral list. The numbers aligned with missing campaign funds noted but never explained in last year's oversight report. The poison allegation was harder. Autopsy results required next of kin authorization. She tried to report her friend Sasha, who owed her a favor. Sasha said she'd dig. By evening, Mara's eyes throbbed. She calendar-blocked Saturday and Sunday for rest, praying no new funerals appeared. But Saturday morning, Mr. Singh called with a gentle apology. A motorcycle accident, 4 victims, families requesting her. She nearly refused, then heard her mother's lullaby inside her skull, a reminder or a reprimand she couldn't tell. He accepted. The grief of strangers, she reasoned, had not conspired to kill her. She wouldn't punish them. 4 services in one day bled her voice raw. She returned home croaking syllables that tasted of copper. 1:11 a.m. arrived anyway. Avery Holt waited, impatience rolling off him like static. "Progress?" "I have transaction proof, working on toxicology." He frowned. The room temperature plummeted. Condensation beaded the window. "Work faster. Brandon grows bolder. He's filing emergency papers Tuesday to seize control of my board. Stop him before then." Mara stared into his translucent eyes. "What if I fail?" "Then your lullabies will never drain me from this place. I swear it by the breath I'm missing." The next 2 days blurred into phone calls, internet forums, and clandestine copying machines. Sasha eventually procured a leaked toxicology summary, trace amounts of digitalis masked by the early assumption of heart failure. Medical examiner's note: toxic ingestion cannot be ruled out, but evidence was not exposure. No prosecutor would touch a high-profile case built on leaked documents and a singer's intuition. Mara paced until friction eroded her nerves, then phoned Mr. Singh after office hours. He answered in his warm baritone. She summoned courage. "Have you ever seen anything after my songs?" A pause lengthened, thick with unvoiced speculations. "I've felt things," he said carefully. "Cold winds when the air vents were still, shadows that lingered too long. Why? What if I could make you see?" The funeral director loved order fielder labels, aligned, caskets polished until they mirrored heaven, yet he surprised her. "If it brings peace to families, show me." An idea ignited. Mara rang Avery Holt's widow Sunday evening, offering to host a private memorial the next night for close friends and family. A smaller ritual, she explained, to ease the days after headlines faded. Mrs. Holt, voice hoarse from tears, agreed. Mara asked her to invite Brandon. She said the board would be there too. Monday dusk, St. Felicity's small chapel brimmed again, though cameras were barred. Candles lit pew ends, roses replaced lilies. Mr. Singh dimmed the chandeliers until flame was the only color. Mara stood before the front pew, palms sweating, throat patched but functional thanks to licorice root tea. She sang 2 common hymns to lull the living, then inhaled for something new, a melody she had never voiced aloud, one that had threaded dreams since childhood. counter-rotating thirds, unresolved sevenths, a shimmer of Lydian brightness corroded by minor inner. She aimed it not at the mourners but at the space between molecules. The veil thinned with every beat. Avery Holt materialized center aisle, clearer than he'd appeared even to her bedroom. For the first time, other eyes widened. Gasps erupted. Someone knocked over a hymnal stack. Mara modulated her pitch, weaving a cage of resonance so the ghost wouldn't dissipate too quickly. Avery faced the pew where Brandon sat frozen. His spectral voice emerged, audible as thunder. "You poisoned me, son." Brandon's face drained to parchment. "Hallucination? Digitalis," Avery continued, projecting the autopsy line in bright letters across the air. Murmurs scattered like startled starlings. "You siphoned money, falsified documents, then fed me drops from grandmother's antique vial." Board members rose. One pointed. "Is that real?" Brandon bolted up the aisle. He made it halfway before Mr. Singh blocked the doorway. Who knew the slender man could move so fast? Brandon swung, punching only air. Panic convulsed him into confession. Tears followed. He listed bank accounts, the poison purchase, the forged forms he'd planned to file Tuesday. Phones came out. Someone was already dialing the police. Mara's song faltered. With the confession extracted, a swarm of other shapes seeped through the thinned veil faces she recognized from recent funerals. The biker with one blue eye, the elderly pianist, the infant who'd never drawn breath but still shimmered as potential. Their presence rattled the living into disarray. Candle flames guttered horizontal. She had opened the door too wide. Raising her hands, Mara shifted into the oldest lullaby she knew, her mother's, the one wrapped in twilight hush. The ghosts stilled. One by one they drifted backward, silhouettes receding behind a scrim only she perceived. Avery lingered last, nodding once, a curt courtly appreciation, before dissolving. Silence crashed down. The living were pale, amazed, half terrified, yet nobody screamed. The police arrived 9 minutes later. Brandon went quietly, eyes hollow, as if living revelation cost him more than any spiritual visitation could have. Mr. Singh dismissed guests, citing shock and privacy. By the time the final car backed from the lot, midnight combed cool fingers through the locust trees. Mara sat on the altar steps, voice a tattered rag. "You saw," she croaked. "I saw," he confirmed, sitting beside her. Worry lines pleated his forehead, but his tone held wonder rather than dread. "You bridged a river most people deny exists. Yes, it was chaos, but truth came out. Families deserve that." Mara flexed her stiff fingers. "It can't happen like this again. Too many slipped through. I need boundaries." He considered. "We can schedule private sessions, consent forms, small groups, prepare people. And for your sake, maybe a partner who keeps watch while you sing. Count me in." She exhaled, an ache inside the sigh. For years she'd borne the bargain alone, convinced it would crush anyone else who crossed its path. Tonight proved openness possible. Still, 1:11 a.m. worried her. She dreaded a queue of spirits emboldened by public success. Mr. Singh appeared to sense the tremor. "Set terms," he advised. "People alive are dead. Respect rules when you state them." On the walk home she rehearsed sentences. "I will listen until dawn, no later. I will not expose myself to violence. Justice sought must outweigh harm risk." She entered her apartment, prepared for the clock. 1:11 a.m. blinked at her, but the room stayed empty. Perhaps Avery's grand spectacle had exhausted the nightly quota. Perhaps the lullaby barriers she'd sung sealed the veil more snugly. She climbed into bed before the quiet could worry her. When sunlight stretched across the floorboards, peace felt almost licit. The bakery's morning cinnamon rolls scented the air. Life hadn't collapsed. It had widened. A week later, she accepted a modest service for a grandmother who'd raised 6 grandchildren. The chapel held fewer than 20 mourners. Mara sang soft, unassuming notes. No cameras, no scandals. Families clutched tissues, but their tears were gentled. That night, at 1:11 a.m., the grandmother appeared in Mara's doorway. Her silhouette perched upon a walker that cast no shadow. She smiled kindly. My dears fuss so much, she whispered. Tell them the photo album is already in the attic trunk. They needn't rip the house apart. Mara lifted her pen. Consider it done. Before the ghost departed, Mara added, Sunrise is my closing time now. The grandmother winked. Old women understand curfews. She faded, and Mara realized the arrangement felt civilized. A boundary mutually honored. She wrote the message on a card decorated with violets and mailed it the next morning. Later she met Mr. Singh over tea. They drafted guidelines opt-in ceremonies called the Evening Bridge, limited to 10 living attendees, one ghost at a time. Legal waivers, candles optional. Her nerves eased as structure replaced secrecy. You know, Mr. Singh mused, you aren't merely a singer. You're a midwife for final words. Mara blushed. Midwife sounds messy. He chuckled. So does life. Spring unfurled. Requests arrived. Fewer, but finer. She accepted only what fit the new rules. Families learned to say, please let her know if there's anything unsaid. And sometimes after the lullaby carry, there was nothing needed at all. Silence as graceful as a closing hymn. Yet every so often, Mara woke at 1:11 a.m. to find her mother seated at the foot of the bed, humming the original lullaby. They never spoke. Grief and gratitude share a language without words. Mara listened until the notes curled into dawn. She had been a bridge forced open by accident. Now she was a bridge tended by choice, planked with lullabies, lit by the steadfast candles of both the living and the dead. And on either shore, because of that music, unfinished business finally found its end.